Welcome back to the End Times News Report. I'm Jake Morphonios. One angle in the Las Vegas story that I've not given a whole lot of attention to yet, at least not publicly, is the insider trading that took place just weeks before the shooting event that caused the MGM Resort International stocks to plummet in value. Early on, there were a lot of people talking about this, and so I didn't give it a whole lot of my own attention. But at this point, I think it would be good for us to go back and take a fresh look at some of this information now that we have seen a little bit more of the story. We can put this information in context. What we know for certain at this point is that a number of very wealthy, very powerful men made a lot of money off the Las Vegas massacre. So in this three-part Las Vegas series, I'm going to highlight the stories of four of those men. First, we're going to talk about billionaire globalist George Soros. Part two is going to discuss Soros' friend, James Murin, who is the CEO of MGM Resorts International, which is the company that owns Mandalay Bay Hotel. He's also on one of the Homeland Security advisory boards. And then we're going to discuss in the final segment two men, the former head of the Department of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff, and billionaire casino mogul Sheldon Adelson. Now, in the weeks prior to this shooting, which we know was the largest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, Soros and Murin both took steps to lock in significant financial windfalls for themselves, while Chertoff and Adelson are now positioned to make astronomical profits in the aftermath of the Vegas event. So for the sake of brevity in this video, I'm just going to focus on George Soros. There are a whole lot of good sources out there from which I'm drawing some of this data. And so several people have already touched on this. I'd like to credit everybody, but there's just too many people. These connections got some early attention just days after the shooting event, but it got swallowed up in the fast-moving news cycle. So that's why I think it would be good for us to take a fresh look at some of this. We talk a lot about how strongly we dislike globalists like George Soros because of their meddling in the affairs of the common people. What makes Soros so powerful is the man's money. Forbes magazine maintains a list of all the billionaires in the world. There are a few thousand of them. Currently, Soros is ranked number 29. He has got a net worth of $25.2 billion as of the time of this video. He's the chairman of his own investment firm, which is called Soros Fund Management. And that firm employs about 250 investors. Soros, you may know, is known for having made $1 billion in a single trade back in 1992. What he did was he had bet against the British pound, and his guess turned out to be right, and he broke the Bank of England in the process of scoring the massive financial victory. But what a lot of people don't know is that these big money makers, they don't operate all on their own. These are not just natural-born geniuses. These are men who are crooks that often get inside tips, which of course is illegal. Insider trading is very much a part of a lot of these people's methods. And it's obviously a case of insider trading, insider information, that led George Soros to place a $42 million bet that the MGM resort stock was getting ready to take a major dive. But we'll come back to that in just a minute. First, I want to add this point. These big money makers, they not only cheat through insider trading, but they also employ successful financial investment advisors who help them along the way. Some of the advisors are simply good at their jobs. They're good at guessing what the markets are going to do. But there are others who have their own networks themselves of insider informants. So I'm going to mention one of the advisors who worked for Soros. If we go back to 1992, George Soros didn't make that $1 billion profit all on his own. The man who organized the investment for him was a guy named Stanley Druckenmiller. Not Drunkenmiller, Druckenmiller. I published a report on End Times News Report back on September 11th of 2014 The title of it was George Soros Bets on Massive Stock Market Crash. And in that report, I detailed how hedge fund filings for the second quarter of 2014 revealed a massive spike in defensive positions in George Soros's portfolio. Now, as it turned out, it was this guy, George Soros, who had essentially placed a $2 billion bet that the stock market was getting ready to crash. So he had increased his short position on the S&P 500 by 605%. That was a huge, huge gamble. Basically, to short the market, which is what he did, is to bet that it's going to decline. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's essentially what it means. He also added significant gold positions because gold value usually rises as the stock market value declines. Well, even though the market didn't end up declining to the full extent that he had anticipated, there was a good drop, but it wasn't the big crash. Still, he made money on that bet. Also, I reported in between late 2015 into early 16, Soros profited very nicely during the that heavy Chinese market turbulence. I don't know if you remember that. There was huge crashes happening in the stock market in China because of predatory speculators like George Soros. But it was in the last few months of 2016 that Soros really started betting big again. And what caused him to do that was the kind of surprise of Donald Trump winning the presidential election. Soros anticipated that there was going to be a big drop in the markets as a result of this election. He assumed that the Fed was going to pop the bubble. So he put a good deal of his own money down, betting on a new market slump as a result of this Trump victory. Of course, it didn't turn out that way. Just the opposite happened. Stocks began hitting new highs. And this cost Soros big time. And as a result of that stock market rally, George Soros lost nearly $1 billion. That's a rare thing. That's a rare blunder for Soros. The truth is, Soros is right. There is a huge, monstrous market correction coming. He simply misjudged when the bubble would be popped. And on an ironic note, there was somebody who did profit very nicely at the same time that Soros had lost that $1 billion. It was the same guy, Stanley Druckenmiller. He had since left the Soros firm and was no longer with Soros, but he's the guy who helped Soros break the Bank of England. Well, Druckenmiller had ignored all of the financial pundits that said that the Trump victory was going to cause this big market decline, and instead he bet just the opposite. So following the election, when the stock market rose about 9%, Druckenmiller made a ton of money. All right, so you're probably asking, what does any of this have to do with the Las Vegas shooting? All right, in August of 2017, George Soros received some kind of information that prompted him to place a radically large bet against MGM Resorts International. Again, that's the parent company that owns Mandalay Bay Hotel and Casino. The Security and Exchange Commission filings verifies this. We're not just speculating. We know that Soros placed this bet. In financial vernacular, a bet that a stock is going to go down is called a put. Let me show this to you. This is the Securities and Exchange Commission's government website. Here is Soros's filing date, August 14th, 2017, filed by Soros Fund Management, LLC. We're going to take a look at Form 13F, again, confirmation that this is Soros Fund Management. This is the holdings report. Now we'll scroll down through his stock holdings, and you'll see that he purchased 1,350,000 put options in MGM Resort International stock, and this happened back in August. More accurately, a put gives the person the option to sell a particular stock at a predetermined strike price. If you aren't into investing, I understand this is just like gobbledygook. It's confusing. So let me explain it this way. George Soros, he wants to make some money off of MGM stocks. We know that prior to August of 2017, Soros was not invested in MGM. In fact, he hardly cared about casinos as part of his portfolio. And this is all confirmed by looking at his May 15th SEC form. It's Form 13F. But if we go from May to August, we see on August 14th that he bought put options on 1,350,000 shares, which totaled $42 million. That is a huge amount of money, even for George Soros, on a single bet like that. But Soros was not buying the stock because he thought the stock value was going to go up. You can also make money off of stocks when the price goes down. It's through a process called short selling. Here's basically how it works. Let's say that each share of MGM stock options that Soros bought was valued at $30 a share. And that's roughly around where it was. But in anticipation that the stock price was going to drop, Soros paid about $1 per share as a kind of insurance premium to protect his investment. And this insurance is called the put option. It locks in the value of the stock at $30, even if the price goes down. And in reality, this practice doesn't actually require you to buy the stock outright. You go to a stockbroker who essentially lends you the shares. You borrow them to work with. Because you have bought the put option, though, either the broker or the investor could end up making a profit. It just depends on how far up or down the stock value goes. Essentially, this is gambling. Well, if the stocks never go down, then the broker ends up profiting off of the insurance premium that you paid. He gets to keep that. That's his profit. The system kind of works like really any other insurance. For example, you may pay a monthly premium for health insurance. And if you never get sick, if you never need to use that health insurance, then the health insurance company is the one that profits. You put in, but you don't take out. But if you get sick and your expenses end up costing more than what you put in through your premium payments, then you are the one who ends up profiting. So these put options work basically that same way. So what Soros did was he borrowed around $1.3 million in stock from a broker with the put insurance. So in our example, he borrowed stock at roughly $30 a share. But when the stock price tanked after the Las Vegas shooting, Soros essentially was able to sell the stocks at that lower price. He got to collect the difference in price from the broker without ever having had to buy the stocks outright. So that means that between the $30 and the $20, Soros earned about $10 on each share without ever having to put up the money for the stocks from his own pocket. The money he spent was on the put option, on this kind of insurance, not on the stocks themselves. So there's a whole lot more to short selling and to put options than this. And those who are investors will look at this and see it as very oversimplified. But this should at least give you a basic understanding of how it works. The point is, nobody is going to shell out millions of dollars to place a bet on a stock going down without having a very good reason to believe that something is going to cause the price to drop. So what did George Soros know in advance that caused him to buy puts on almost 1.5 million shares of MGM stock? That's what we need to know. Did James Murin, the CEO of MGM Resorts, tell Soros something? We know that Soros and Murin are associates. They've done quite a bit together in the past financially. We know that they both contribute vast sums of money to the same globalist causes, the same globalist groups, including the notorious Southern Poverty Law Center. They both contribute heavily to various Islamic charities that have links to terrorism. So did Soros simply act on a tip that Mirren gave him? Or, like so many other operations, was Soros actually involved more than that? Was he involved in the crafting of the plot in Las Vegas? We don't know. We know that Soros has worked for years with the CIA. He has helped to destabilize nations. He funded the takeover of the government of Ukraine just a couple years back, 2013-14. He also spearheaded the funding of the mass Islamic migration from the Middle East and North Africa into Western Europe. So I find it curious that on the day before the Las Vegas massacre, George Soros sent out a tweet lashing out at conspiracy theorists. He wrote this: "The increase in conspiracy theories reflects deeper, worrying trends about politics around the world." And included in that tweet was a link to a Financial Times article by a guy named Gideon Rachman. The name of the article was "Soros Hatred is a Global Sickness." And the subtitle of that article was "For a New Generation of Nationalists, the Investor Has Become the Perfect Villain." And in this article, Rachman defends Soros against all these different claims being made against him. But in so doing, Rachman had to acknowledge certain facts. And I'm going to read a couple sentences from that article to you. He says, "The demonization of Mr. Soros in Hungary, where he was born, is not an isolated case. In the past year, he has been denounced by political leaders in Macedonia, Poland, Romania, and Turkey, all of whom claim he is plotting against them. The paranoid right in America also churns out anti-Soros material. As long ago as 2007, Mr. Soros was denounced on Fox News as the, quote, Dr. Evil of the whole world of left-wing foundations." And that's the end of the quote. Well, that was actually right. I'm not a Fox News fan, but they're right. George Soros is the devil, the Dr. Evil of the world of left-wing foundations. And if you want to see some of my exposés on that topic, just look for the link to my George Soros video playlist at the end of this video or in the description below. I've done a lot on Soros over the years. Well, this author, this Financial Times writer, Gideon Rachman, truth is, this guy is a shill for George Soros. Rachman has sat with Soros on at least 2 roundtables discussing financial matters, so it's no surprise that he would try to defend Soros. But I do find it ironic that even Rachman has had to admit that George Soros has bankrolled violent revolutions in Serbia, in Georgia, in Egypt, in a host of Eastern European nations. He has also funded Antifa here in the United States. Isn't it strange, a strange coincidence, that just weeks after the Las Vegas shooting, we've got this Antifa loyalist who enters a Christian church to commit yet another massacre? Of course, it would be a complete stretch to suggest that Soros is directly linked to the church shooter. That's not what I'm saying. But it is definitely true that Soros has helped to fund the rise of the anti-fascist movement inside the United States. We've got financial documents to prove that. And in my mind, that makes Soros at least partly culpable for what has happened, including that church shooting. In much the same way that we would say that a radical Islamic cleric that preaches jihad is culpable if one of his adherents hears this and then goes out and commits a suicide attack or goes and joins ISIS or something. Okay, there is responsibility there, even if you were not giving a direct order to the person to go out and do something. That's the case with Soros. He's funding this stuff. And given the number of claims that Stephen Paddock had ties to ISIS and possibly to Antifa, it seems that there is justification in looking deeper into whether or not Paddock was a low-level pawn in this ongoing globalist chess game that's being played by the New World Order. I've discussed it recently. The New World Order works through mafias and criminal operations to achieve some of their goals. And with Soros acting as a financial hitman on behalf of the Rothschild syndicate, I think it's worth looking into how he is connected to what happened in Vegas. And he is connected, if only loosely. He definitely has a connection here. He made a lot of money, millions, tens of millions of dollars, off of this event, as a result of this event. But I don't want you to make up your mind on this story yet. First, let's examine the bizarre pre-shooting financial activity of multi-millionaire James Murin, the CEO of MGM Resorts International. Watch for that report. I'll have it out shortly. For the End Times News Report, I'm Jake Morphonios.